Picture Jerusalem in your mind. What do you see? Golden domes, ancient stone alleyways, a city of peace, sacred to billions. Now erased it completely. Because the Jerusalem you think you know is a medieval city, an Ottoman city. The Jerusalem of today is built on top of a ghost. The question that has haunted archaeologists and historians for centuries is this: what was this city like when its most famous resident walked its streets? What did Jesus of Nazareth actually see? We can read the descriptions in ancient texts, but the words fall flat. They lack color, sound, and scale. So today, for the first time on this channel, we are using artificial intelligence to tear down the modern city and rebuild its predecessor. We are reconstructing Jerusalem in its maximum splendor at the exact moment that changed world history. And I promise you, the dusty, quiet town you've pictured is about to be shattered. To understand the Jerusalem that Jesus knew, we have to understand the immense problem facing its builder, King Herod the Great. Herod was not a Jew by birth. He was an Idumean, a puppet king installed by the Roman Empire. He ruled a population that despised him as a foreigner and a collaborator. He had a massive legitimacy problem. The Jews believed their temple was the house of God, built by Solomon, rebuilt after the exile. To them, Herod was just a temporary caretaker, an unclean hand on a sacred vessel. So Herod did what any insecure, power-hungry tyrant would do. He decided to build not just a renovation, but a construction project so massive, so beautiful, so uninspiring that the people would forget he was an outsider. He would build them a new house for God, and in doing so, secure his own legacy. But could a man dripping in blood truly build something divine? Now, let's walk into that city. If you were a pilgrim approaching Jerusalem for Passover, the first thing you would see wouldn't be the city walls, it would be the temple. The AI reconstruction shows it clearly, sitting on Mount Moriah like a massive snow-capped mountain. The historian Josephus tells us it was covered in gold plates. Imagine the sun rising over the Mount of Olives and hitting that gold. A flash of light so intense you had to shield your eyes. It was designed to blind you, to overwhelm you with the power of God and the power of the king who built it. But you couldn't just walk in, you had to enter through the city itself. The main entrance was probably the Damascus Gate, but in Jesus' time it was a massive arched entryway into a new commercial district built by Herod's son. But the real gateway to the temple was a monumental staircase leading to the double gate, now buried under a later gate. Our AI pulls back the rubble. You would walk up wide, shallow steps, not rushed, but processed. You would enter a vast colonnaded courtyard known as the Royal Stoa. Imagine a Roman forum but built on the edge of a cliff. 4 rows of massive Corinthian columns, a roof of carved cedar, the floor a patchwork of polished stone. This wasn't a church, it was a civic center. This is where money changers sat, where merchants sold doves for sacrifice. This is where Jesus, according to the Gospels, flipped the tables. You can picture it now, can't you? The chaos, the echoes of animals and coins against the marble. The sudden, furious silence as a carpenter from Nazareth starts shouting. But the temple was strictly zoned. Only Jews could enter the inner courts, and only priests could enter the holy place. And only the high priest, once a year, could enter the Holy of Holies, the empty room where God was believed to dwell. The AI helps us visualize the court of the Israelites, separated from the court of the women by the beautiful gate. This gate, according to tradition, was made of Corinthian bronze, a metal so precious it was valued above gold. It was so heavy it took 20 men to close it. Imagine the doors, gleaming like mirrors, swinging shut with a deep, resonant boom that echoed through the mountains. This was the heartbeat of the Jewish world. But Jerusalem was not just a holy city, it was a Roman city under occupation. And Herod, ever the politician, made sure Rome was comfortable. To the west of the temple on the other side of the Timarum Valley rose the 3 massive towers of Herod's palace, Phasael, Hippicus, and Mariamne, named after his brother, his friend, and his executed wife. These towers were not just defenses, they were a statement. They loomed over the city, a constant reminder of who held the real power. Inside the palace walls there were gardens, pools, and porticos. It was a slice of Rome in the heart of Judea. A constant, visible tension between the spiritual kingdom of the temple and the earthly power of the empire. And what of the streets in between? The AI shows us they weren't the quiet, dusty lanes you might imagine. The main thoroughfare, the Cardo Maximus, was a grand colonnaded avenue, lined with shops. You would have heard Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin all in the same block. The smells of baking bread, burning incense, and animal dung would have mixed in the air. It was a crowded, bustling, dirty, vibrant metropolis of perhaps 80,000 people, which swelled to 500,000 during the feasts. Imagine the press of the crowd, the jostling, the noise. You couldn't move without touching someone. Just south of the temple, our reconstruction reveals the Pool of Siloam today. It's a muddy archaeological dig. Then, it was a massive public swimming pool, part of Jerusalem's incredible water system. Pilgrims would immerse themselves here before climbing the steps to the temple, purifying themselves before entering the presence of God. Imagine the scene. Hundreds of people, voices lifted in psalms, the splash of water, the feeling of spiritual preparation. It was a place of physical and spiritual cleansing, a living ritual at the very doorstep of the divine. But this entire world, this gleaming city of gold and marble, was built on a knife's edge. The political tension was a powder keg. The zealots wanted revolution. The Pharisees wanted purity. The Sadducees, the priestly class, wanted to keep the peace in their power. And watching over all of it, from the Antonia fortress, which sat directly next to the temple, were the Roman soldiers. This fortress, which the AI shows us connected directly to the temple courts by a staircase, was the ultimate pattern interrupt. Imagine praying in the court of the Gentiles, looking up and seeing the eagle standards of the Roman legion staring back at you. The symbol of occupation, of oppression, loomed over the house of God. It was a deliberate architectural insult designed to say, "We are in charge." Even here, this was the city Jesus entered on what we now call Palm Sunday. He came from the Mount of Olives, down through the Kidron Valley, and up towards those golden gates. He saw the crowds, the soldiers, the priests, the gold, and the poverty. He saw the magnificence and the rot, and according to the Gospels, he wept over it. He prophesied that not one stone would be left upon another, and just 40 years after his crucifixion, it happened. In 70 AD, the Roman legions under Titus besieged Jerusalem. The famine was so horrific that history records mothers eating their own children. When the Romans finally breached the walls, they didn't just conquer the city, they annihilated it. They tore the temple down, stone by stone, just as the prophecy said. They even scraped the gold from the walls, prying apart the massive blocks to get to the melted metal, fulfilling the words that not one stone would be left upon another. The Herod's Jerusalem, the city of gold and marble, was erased from the earth. What you see in the AI reconstruction is not just a historical model. It is a monument to a dream and a warning about power. Herod built it to be eternal, to cement his name forever, and within a generation of its completion, it was gone. The city of God became a Roman quarry, then a pagan city called Aelia Capitolina, then a Byzantine ghost, then a Crusader fortress, then an Ottoman walled town. The Jerusalem of Jesus is a buried city, a foundation upon which every subsequent empire built its own dreams. So next time you see a news report from the modern Jerusalem, remember what lies beneath. Remember the gold, the marble, the shouting in the temple courts, the splash of the pool of Siloam, and the long shadow of the Roman towers. Remember that the stones of that city heard the most famous sermon ever preached and witnessed the most pivotal week in human history, that Jerusalem is gone. But through the lens of history and the power of AI, we can almost hear its echo. Thanks for walking those ancient streets with me.